in the background.
You're on. Give it a couple minutes. I mean, a second. You're on.
Aloha, dear friends. God is most glorious. Welcome to the Sunday morning devotional program, sponsored by the Spiritual Assemblies of the Baha'is of South DeKalb County and Sandy Springs, Georgia. So wonderful to have all of you with us today. You know, across the globe, the teachings of the Baha'i faith brought to us more than 150 years ago by His Holiness Baha'u'llah, its founder, and whose name in Arabic means the glory of God. His teachings have inspired and continue to inspire individuals and communities as they strive to improve their own lives and contribute to the advancement of civilization. Baha'i beliefs address such essential themes as the oneness of God and religion, the oneness of humanity and freedom from all forms of prejudice, the inherent nobility of the human being, the progressive revelation of religious truth, a gradual unfolding of God's purpose with the appearance of each divine teacher, the development of spiritual qualities which allows us to reflect the image God made us in, the integration of worship and service, with work performed in the spirit of service actually being accounted as worship in the eyes of God, the fundamental equality of the sexes more widely evidenced in a setting of equal opportunity, the harmony between religion and science as an established fact, the centrality of justice in all human endeavor, the importance of education, particularly for children, and the dynamics of the relationships that strive to bind together individuals, communities, and institutions as humanity advances towards its collective maturity. Friends, we've been having such wonderful programs every week, and today it's going to be the same. We're pleased to have you join us. Again, welcome. We will begin with opening devotions, followed by music by Don Erdman. So that will be a treat. Elizabeth?
Ordain for me, O my Lord, and for those who believe in thee, that which is deemed best for us in thine estimation, as set forth in the Mother Book. For within the grasp of thy hand, thou holdest the determined measures of all things. Thy goodly gifts are increasingly showered upon such as cherish thy love, and the wondrous tokens of thy heavenly bounties are amply bestowed on those who recognize thy divine unity. We commit unto thy care whatsoever thou hast destined for us, and implore thee to grant us all the good that thy knowledge embraceth. Protect me, O my Lord, from every evil that thine omniscience perceiveth, inasmuch as there is no power nor strength but in thee. No triumph is forthcoming save from thy presence, and it is thine alone to command whatever God hath willed hath been, and that which he hath not willed shall not be. There is no power nor strength except in God, the most exalted, the most mighty, the Ba.
Elizabeth. Kathy?
Lord, provide for the speedy growth of the tree of thy divine unity. Water it then, O Lord, with the flowing waters of thy good pleasure, and cause it before the revelations of thy divine assurance to yield such fruits as thou desirest for thy glorification and exaltation, thy praise and thanksgiving, and to magnify thy name, to laud the oneness of thine essence, and to offer adoration unto thee. Inasmuch as all this lieth within thy grasp, and in that of none other. Great is the blessedness of those whose blood thou hast chosen wherewith to water the tree of thy divine affirmation, and thus to exalt thy holy and immutable word. The Bob.
Thank you, Kathy. Debbie?
I don't see. O ye men of wisdom among nations, shut your eyes to estrangement, then fix your gaze upon unity. Cleave tenaciously unto that which will lead to the well-being. Cleave tenaciously unto that which will lead to the well-being and tranquility of all mankind. This span of earth is but one homeland and one habitation. It behooveth you to abandon vainglory, which causeth alienation, and to set your hearts on whatever will ensure harmony. In the estimation of the people of Baha'i, man's glory lieth in his knowledge, his upright conduct, his praiseworthy character, his wisdom, and not in his nationality or rank. O people of the earth, appreciate the value of this heavenly word. Indeed, it may be likened unto a ship for this ocean of knowledge, and a shining luminary for the realm of perception. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you, Debbie. Micah?
Oh my God, oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord.
Thank you, Micah. Elizabeth?
Thou compassionate Lord, thou who art generous and able, we are servants of thine, sheltered beneath thy providence. Cast thy glance of favor upon us. Give light to our eyes, hearing to our ears, and understanding and love to our hearts. Render our souls joyous and happy through thy glad tidings. O Lord, point out to us the pathway of thy kingdom and resuscitate all of us through the breath of the Holy Spirit. Bestow upon us life everlasting and confer upon us never-ending honor. Unify mankind and illumine the world of humanity. May we all follow thy pathway, long for thy good pleasure, and seek the mysteries of thy kingdom. O God, unite us and connect our hearts with thy indissoluble bond. Verily, thou art the giver, thou art the kind one, and thou art the Almighty. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Kathy?
Consecrate thou, O my God, the whole of this tree unto him, that from it may be revealed all the fruits created by God within it for him whom thou him through whom God hath willed to reveal all that he pleaseth. By thy glory, I have not wished that this tree should ever bear any branch, leaf, or fruit that would fail to bow down before him on the day of his revelation, or refuse to laud thee through him, as beseemeth the glory of his all-glorious revelation, and the sublimity of his most sublime concealment. And shouldst thou behold, O my God, any branch, leaf, or fruit upon me that hath failed to bow down before him on the day of his revelation, cut it off, O my God, from that tree, for it is not of me, nor shall it return unto me. The Bob.
Thank you, Kathy. Debbie?
O my brother, hearken to the delightsome words of my honeyed tongue, and quaff the stream of mystic holiness from my sugar-shedding lips. Sow the seeds of my divine wisdom in the pure soil of thy heart, and water them with the knowledge of certitude, that the highest sense of my knowledge and wisdom may spring up fresh and green in the sacred city of thy heart. Baha'u'llah, the hidden words.
Thank you, Debbie. Micah?
Baha'u'llah has proclaimed the oneness of the world of humanity. He has caused various nations and divergent creeds to unite. He has declared that difference of race and color is like the variegated beauty of flowers in a garden. If you enter a garden, you will see yellow, white, blue, red flowers in profusion and beauty, each radiant within itself, and although different from the others, lending its own charm to them. Racial difference in the human kingdom is similar. If all the flowers in a garden were of the same color, the effect would be monotonous and wearying to the eye. Therefore, Baha'u'llah hath said that the various races of humankind lend a composite harmony and beauty of color to the whole. Let all associate, therefore, in this great human garden, even as flowers grow and blend together side by side without discord or disagreement between them.
Thank you, Micah. Elizabeth?
The diversity in the human family should be the cause of love and harmony, as it is in music, where many different notes blend together in the making of a perfect chord. If you meet those of different race and color from yourself, do not mistrust them and withdraw yourself unto your shell of conventionality, but rather be glad and show them kindness. Think of them as different colored roses growing in the beautiful garden of humanity, and rejoice to be among them. Abdul Baha.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Friends, it's now time for the healing prayer. And if any one of you wish to remember a loved one through this prayer for healing, please feel free to call out their name at this time, and then the prayer will be read by Matthew.
Elon Bowers,
Marilyn Handis,
Barbara Sacco,
Josie Reynolds,
Michael Atkins,
George Lord,
Beth Bowers,
Joel Smith,
Imogene Hewlett,
Dee Dee Cavazos,
Joe Barker, Millie Fuller,
Jack Gillibo,
Bafa Gilbo,
Sonia Atkins,
Thy name is my healing, O my God, and remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to me is my healing and my succor in both this world and the world to come. Thou, verily, art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Wow.
Thank you, Matthew. Friends, now we're blessed to have a musical presentation by our accomplished musician, Mr. Don Erdman. Don,
Thank you.
you're welcome. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Blessed is the spot. I know you
Yeah.
recognized it. Just beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, friends. You know, every week we are so fortunate because we have a guest presenter who comes and shares with us their insights on a particular topic. This week we are honored to have with us, and I don't see him on here. Once again, Burton R. Smith from Lansing, Michigan. Burton, let's see. I don't see him on yet.
Maybe Don could entertain us with some more music until we find him.
While I check on Burton.
I can do that.
See what the hold up is.
You ready?
Okay, I'll play a little bit.
That too was equally beautiful. Thank you, Don.
Sure.
No, you have a huge repertoire of music that you could just play as asked. Let's see if we get a reply back. There he is. Barton.
Good.
Wonderful. Okay, I was just introducing you. Sorry, I think that might have been my fault for not forwarding the updated link.
It's all right.
Okay, great. Friends, like as I was saying, this week we're honored to have with us once again Burton Smith from Lansing, Michigan. Burton was born in Lansing, the second son of Baha'i parents, William and Eva Smith. He declared his belief in Baha'u'llah and the Baha'i cause in 1971 at Llewellyn Baha'i School, which is now the Llewellyn Center for Higher Learning. Burton graduated from Princeton with a degree in civil and geological engineering in 1977. While at Princeton, Burton was a co-founder of the Princeton Baha'i Club with Michigan native Jay Tyson back in '76 and Bill Foster as the faculty staff advisor. He was a founding member of the Princeton University Jazz Ensemble, playing acoustic and electric bass. He was the first person of African descent to medal, which means the lowest score for the Princeton golf team at the Harvard-Yale-Princeton match. And he's a member of the two-time Ivy League championship team. Burton was one of 12 members of the Baha'i Black Men's Gathering, the BMG, who traveled to Ghana and Haifa in December of 2006. He retired from the state of Michigan as a staff specialist in 2010. Since retirement in 2011, Burton has researched the lost history of Lansing, Michigan. He lives in Lansing with Denise, his wife of 33 years. Their son, Brandon, lives and works in Chicago, doing quality assurance, quality control, contract work for a video gaming company. We're pleased to have him share with us this morning, once again, on the following topic this time. Lewis Gregory with Joy and David Earl in Lansing, Michigan, an investigation. So friends, please welcome Burton Smith.
Thank you, Hermione.
Oh, you're so welcome.
Aloha, friends. Let me see if I can get this PowerPoint scale to work this time. But first I have to do is I have to make sure I can share my screen. Okay. Let's go to this.
You already have it open, right?
Yep, just a second. I'm going to open it now. Yes, it is open now. Okay.
And now share after you.
All right, let's go to, okay, hold tight. Share screen. Okay, let's share sound and optimize video clip. Share. Okay, can everyone see this?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, I wanted to start this time with what it says, if everyone remembers the TV show Password, I'm going to call it the lightning round, and I'd like to start with 4 slides that says specifically involving Lansing.
Let me just interrupt right quick. Everyone, if you're not speaking, kindly mute yourselves. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. All righty. Slideshow. And from beginning. Okay, yep. Not a problem. All righty. Let's see how we do. Everyone can see my screen, correct? Hello.
We can see it.
Okay. So, like I said, this is the lightning round. For those of you who don't know who this gentleman is, I guarantee you this is the high school picture, Central High School picture of Filbert Little. I'm sure you know his younger brother. This is the picture of Reverend Joel King, and I'm sure that you know his nephew. In fact, this picture that was the cover of Time was the day after he spoke in Lansing in 1957. I like to put the two of them together specifically because they have a history at Lansing. Malcolm X, then Malcolm Little, lived right across the street from Lincoln School Community Center. And Martin Luther King spoke in Lansing at the direction of his uncle. And then he was given, as said, a invitation to attend, it says, a gathering at Lincoln School Community Center. So this is the history of Lansing that not very many people know about, but it's the history of Lansing specifically when tied to, as said, education. So going forward, history is a powerful instrument. At its best, it provides a perspective on the past and casts a light on the future. It populates human consciousness with heroes, saints, and martyrs whose example awakens in everyone touched by it capacities they had not imagined they had possessed. It helps make sense of the world and of human experience. It inspires, consoles, and enlightens. It enriches life, and this is from the Century of Light. The source of all learning is the knowledge of God. The perpetuation of ignorance is the most grievous form of oppression. It reinforces the many walls of prejudice that stand as barriers to the realization of the oneness of humankind, at once the goal and operating principle of Baha'u'llah's revelation. Access to knowledge is the right of every human being, and participation in its generation, application, and diffusion, a responsibility that all must shoulder in the great enterprise of building a prosperous world civilization, each individual according to his or her talents and abilities. Justice demands universal participation. Universal House of Justice, April 210, to the Baha'is of the world. I said we didn't read this the last time because essentially we've got the updated listing from the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. So I'm just going to read the last portion, which says the resolution to these challenges lies in recognizing and embracing the truth at the heart of Baha'u'llah's revelation, the incontrovertible truth that humanity is one. Ignorance of this truth, which embodies the very spirit of the age, is itself a form of oppression. For without it, it is impossible to build a truly just and peaceful world. So a lot of the information that is found about the Baha'i faith in African American history was from this document. These are the early pupils of the eye, excuse me. I said, and we're going to focus specifically on Louis Gregory. We do know specifically that he did come to Lansing. And I said, we have Coralie Franklin Cook, who wrote the letter to Abdu'l-Baha specifically about interracial relationships. And hers was the first documented inference of Alexander Hamilton being a person of color that I remember. Of course, it's been true. And it was before Lin-Manuel Miranda in Hamilton. This is Louis Gregory and Louisa Gregory's first home in Washington, D.C. It's 1338 V Northwest. Unfortunately, 42 years ago, they made a decision to tear it down because no one wanted to upkeep it. It is now the place of a softball diamond inside the city. This is their second address, 779 Fairmont Northwest. This is still standing. This is their third address in 1918, 507 Castle Place. To my understanding, it says there, but this is one of the things I have to check to confirm before we finish the documentation. Let's go back to March 19th, 1912 in Lansing, Michigan, which is where the State Journal put this picture of the Master Abdu'l-Baha. It's dated March 19th, and you'll notice by the title, it says Baha'is Cult Chief Seeking Converts. This just happens to be 3 weeks before Abdu'l-Baha landed in New York City. So if anyone was wondering about specific information, I always get a smile whenever I give, it says this slide because of what it says at the top. So if you'll notice at the bottom, it talks about seek converts. He will address the Persian American Society in Washington, April 18th. The faith already has followers in most of the large cities here. This is the REO runabout that Roy Wilhelm, hand of the cause, wound up taking Abdu'l-Baha around the New Jersey countryside. The reason that I include this slide is because the REO runabout is in 1911, and REO stands for Ransom Eli Olds, and this was built in Lansing, Michigan. So the hands of the cause visits to Lansing, Corinne True, Martha Root, Louis Gregory, Agnes Alexander, Leroy Iowas, Dorothy Baker, John Robarts, and William Sears. Notice that Louis Gregory, it says, is the only person of color. It says amongst these folks, and I've already showed you the previous listing. There's a reason for that. Shoghi Effendi, upon the passing of the master, that says became the guardian of the Baha'i faith. The Baha'i movement, that says, welcomed Martha Root to Lansing in 1923 in January. Someone asked, why would Martha Root stop in Lansing? Lansing was a prosperous town, and she was deepened in the faith by hand of the cause of God, Roy Wilhelm, who, remember, drove out the Baha in an Oldsmobile, which was made in Lansing. It was a standing room only crowd there on Ottawa Street. The Greatest Holy Leaf, Bahia Hanum, that says, while Shoghi Effendi, that said, was away from the faith, that says, became the center. That said, specifically involving the activities of the faith. And Shoghi Effendi mentions her specifically of having a generosity, a love at once disinterested and undiscriminating that reflected so clearly the attributes of her father, Abdu'l-Baha. This is the first listing of the Baha'is of Lansing, Michigan. You'll notice that the time, most of the women's names are not mentioned. So Mrs. Edward Bryington, her first name was Beatrice. She was chairman. Mrs. W.E. Werner, that says who was treasurer. Her first name was Kate. Miss Helen Whitney, Mrs. Nellie Partlow, Mrs. John Hiltz, her first name was Lilla, and Mrs. Kirkpatrick, that would be Bertha Hyde Kirkpatrick, and Nellie Partlow. It turns out that it was Nellie Partlow's husband that wound up renting the house that Martha Root spoke in. You'll notice it was 924 Michigan Avenue in East Lansing. Strange that Lansing would have an East Lansing address for mail, but it says that was due to the believers having, respectively, getting together, it says within 25 to 30 miles of each other to form an assembly. This is 924 East Michigan, currently today. It says, so this house still exists, and it is right around, it says the corner and a few places down from the, this is the boundary of East Lansing and Lansing. So it's actually in East Lansing still. This is the March 6th letter from the Lansing Local Spiritual Assembly to the Guardian. The Lansing Assembly conveys to you Naru's greetings and love. Excuse me, beloved Shoghi Effendi. The Lansing Assembly conveys to you Naru's greetings and love. We gather together for meetings twice each week and also keep the 19-day feast. We hope to serve the cause more efficiently and with greater humility this coming year. We would be grateful for you to remember us in your prayers. Our prayers are for the Baha'is in the Holy Land. Please give the Holy Family, it said, our love and greetings. Signed, W.E. Werner, who is the secretary, and note the Williamston address. Pearl Warner, excuse me, W.E. Werner's his wife's name was Pearl, not Kate. Kate's was actually Helen Whitney's mother's name. So this is the response from the Guardian. And if you remember that yesterday is the 94th anniversary of this date. So this is Dear Baha'i Friends of Lansing, Michigan. Our beloved Guardian asked me to thank you warmly for your letter of March 6, 1927, sending him your Naru's greetings, Baha'i love. He is so glad to hear that you keep the 19-day feast as well as gatherings for meetings twice weekly. He will pray for you all that your labors and work for the cause may be divinely guided and abundantly blessed, and that many may become attracted to this divine cause through the efforts of the spiritual light and fragrance emanating from you. With best Baha'i greetings and love from the Holy Family in which I join, I am your fellow worker in this glorious service, signed Ethel J. Rosenberg. And then the Guardian at the end of the day writes, Dear fellow workers, I am glad to hear from those distant and devoted friends who are laboring with unsparing devotion to promote the interests of our beloved cause. I will pray for them all that their numbers may increase, their hearts be gladdened, and their understanding be deepened, that they may become the true revealers of the radiance of this glorious faith and the establishers of its principles in men's hearts. Your true brother, Shoghi. Now, March 27th is also the Nexus date, as I call it, specifically because it's the day that Sadie and this is Bertha Oglesby were in Haifa, were in pilgrimage. And on March 27th, the bottom says, the Guardian Shoghi Effendi linked race unity to the growth of the faith and maintained that Sadie must play an important role in the process. According to Sadie's journal, on March 27th, 1927, he said to her, my charge to you is that when you go back to America, tell the friends to look within themselves and find there is a reason for so few people of color being in the cause. Until this is removed, the cause cannot grow. This is vital. So this is the nexus point between the Baha'is of Lansing and the Oglesby, specifically say the Oglesby and what she said at the 1927 conference. None worked more tirelessly for the removal of racial prejudice, signed Gail Morrison, in To Move the World. This was a special moment for me because I found Louis Gregory had been here in Lansing. Louis Gregory, Washington, D.C. International Baha'i Speaker, will hold a spiritualist message circle Friday evening at 219 South Cedar Street. The Whitney letter is what led me to finding it. This is a letter from Helen Whitney that was to Horace Holly. And I'll just skip the first part or then read it. If you can spare the time, you will please be so kind as to write a short article which we can use in the paper when we have our next speaker here. The editor of the State Journal seems to be opening his heart and paper to the Baha'is at last, but none of us are capable of writing a concise and clear article which we could run in connection with an announcement of a meeting. Mr. Gregory was here week before last and made several contacts with the leading people of color. He had two good meetings. Last week, this particular week, Mrs. True was with us. She also went on to Ann Arbor and spoke to their group. Quite a number of people have been attracted to the teachings, and I hope we can keep the good work up. If you have not the time for this article, would you let me know who could help us? Mr. Werner asked me to enclose these reports. Sincerely, Helen Whitney. We have never had anything in the paper to explain what the Baha'i movement is or stands for. So Helen Whitney's letter is what led me to believe that Louis Gregory was here. And when I found him, I found him. Now, strangely enough, the next week after Louis Gregory had left, this picture was taken at the Werner farmhouse in Williamston. So this is the Lansing Local Spiritual Assembly. This is Helen Whitney. This is Beatrice Bryanton. This is Bertha High Kirkpatrick. This is W.E. Werner. This is John Hiltz. And this is Corinne True. This is Ali Kuli Khan in America, specifically the picture of him with the master and Ali Kuli Khan's wife, Florence Breed Khan. And this is a later picture of them. And you can see the building behind them is the White House. And this is obviously for a function. So, April 23rd, 1912, Ali Kuli Khan was instructed by Abdu'l-Baha to bring Louis Gregory back to dine with the distinguished guests. The services Ali Kuli Khan provided to the Baha'i world, from provisional translations of the Kitab-i-Iqan, 7 Valleys and 4 Valleys, to being the messenger between Robert Turner and Abdu'l-Baha in 1909. So he gave Robert Turner's letter back to the master. Included is Dr. Khan's time in Lansing. 3 weeks in February 1937, in a special letter to the Guardian, written and sent from Lansing on the passing of Mary Hanford Ford, Ms. Florence Khan's spiritual mother. The Guardian's response was dated March the 6th. So I'm just going to show you this specifically, because this is Ali Kuli Khan in Lansing. 25 years after being directed by Abdu'l-Baha to get Mr. Gregory. So he came to show his rare collection of Persian art. And there was a permanent exhibit for the 3 weeks he was here in Lansing in February. So he's planning to stay until February 24th. He was then. So it says lectures outside, special groups will be announced, clubs and other groups. This is the letter that Ali Kuli Khan wrote to the Guardian concerning the passing of Mary Hanford Ford, who was his wife, Florence Breed Khan's spiritual mother, who gave Florence her very first book, which was The Hidden Words of Baha'u'llah. This was the envelope in which it says the letter was sent. You'll notice the Lansing, that said postmark. So this is essentially my time. This is where I list this specifically. This is David and Joy Earl, who most of the story will be about from this point forward, and their connection with Louis Gregory. David and Joy Earl were married June 19th, 1933, in Westfield, New York. David was a student at Oberlin College, and Joy was a student at the conservatory there at Oberlin. If you'll notice quite carefully, I said, you'll notice that both of them are listed as white. David and Joy Earl at the Llewellyn Ranch in 1938. They were the first interracial couple to be at Llewellyn. David became a Baha'i in 1936, and we have yet to find when Joy actually declared, but that's part of where the story goes from this point. Their very first house in Lansing was 1234 Kingsley Court. It was listed as being in the colored section. It has since been, that says this entire area has been changed, and the site of their home is now the community center, which is named after Richard and Olivia Letts. So this is David Earl teaching Esperanto at Sparrow Hospital, November 29th. This is the grammar listing of Esperanto. And this is Joy Earl, her very first special program as given of interracial goodwill featuring 3 colored musicians, Miss Josephine Tinsley, Jewel Allen, and Herbert Johnson. So Joy Earl is speaking about interracial goodwill. If you'll notice the date, it was December 4th, 1938. The next week, on December 11th, Joy Earl goes to the Seymour Avenue Methodist Church and speaks about interracial goodwill. Same musicians. Joy Earl was an accomplished pianist, and she accompanied Josephine, Herbert Johnson, and Jewel Allen. So that was one question that someone had asked me, is how did you know that Joy was an accomplished pianist? I said she was an accompanist as well as a pianist and played, it says, organ as well. These are the 6 places where Joy Earl spoke. The top 3 still exist here in Lansing. It says North Presbyterian, Seymour Avenue Methodist, and Mount Hope Methodist still are in existence. Seymour Avenue is a incubator for companies, but North Presbyterian and Mount Hope Methodist still welcome congregations. The Church of the Redeemer, First Presbyterian, and the Lansing YWCA were also places that Joy Earl spoke, and we'll get to those. So, The Advent of Divine Justice was published December 25th, 1938. Joy Earl was speaking about interracial goodwill 3 weeks before this was given to the Baha'is of North America. Inside The Advent of Divine Justice, it says this: freedom from racial prejudice in any of its forms should, at such a time as this, when an increasingly large section of the human race is falling a victim to its devastating ferocity, be adopted as the watchword of the entire body of the American believers in whichever state they reside, whatever circles they move, whatever their age, traditions, tastes, and habits. It should be consistently demonstrated in every phase of their activity in life, whether in the Baha'i community or outside it, in public or in private, formally as well as informally, individually as well as in their official capacity as organized groups, committees, and assemblies. It should be deliberately cultivated through the various and everyday opportunities, no matter how insignificant, that present themselves, whether in their homes, their business offices, their schools and colleges, their social parties and recreation grounds, their Baha'i meetings, conferences, conventions, summer schools, and assemblies. As I said before, I think this means all the time. This was what Yogi Effendi wrote to the local spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of Atlanta in 1947. This was a seminal moment in Joy Earl and Lansing, specifically involving interracial relations. The friendship dinner in Lansing specifically lists a sextet accompanied and directed by Mrs. Joy Earl sang several selections. It was composed of Mrs. Josephine Tinsley, Mrs. Gertrude Jackson, Mrs. Fanny Eaton, Jewel Allen, Charles Husband, and Louis A. Brown. And the reason that I say that is because 100 guests attended the International Interracial Interfaith Friendship Dinner Tuesday evening at the YWCA. So you'll notice that everyone was given a description. Notice that Dr. Stafford, it says, was given as Protestant, and that Negro was the Reverend Louis Pettiford. We'll get to that. This is a picture of Joy Earl. It was taken at Llewellyn. This is the sextet: Josephine, Fanny, Gertrude, Jewel, Charles, and Louis. I don't know if I have 4 pictures, but I don't have all 6. So that's why I'm not showing them at this time. This is Joy Earl speaking at the Collins African Methodist Episcopal Church in Lansing 2 weeks after speaking, or the interracial goodwill. This is David Earl writing to his sister at the latter part of that same day, at that same month. It said, saying, this is a really this is a really worthwhile book. I hope you like it so much as I do. May 31st. And this is Stanwood Cobb's character. The reason I mention this is because Stanwood Cobb was also the person who was introduced by Joy Earl when I was at Llewellyn as a 12-year-old. So this is David Earl at the bottom of the page, opening the summer school. Notice the spelling is incorrect. Excuse me, let me go back because I don't want to miss that. Joy Hill Earl's first Baha'i study class was in Lansing, Michigan. The Baha'i Friday study class is being conducted at the YWCA by Mrs. David Earl, the subject being the New Age. Notice that Joy Earl is still being thought of as Mrs. David Earl. At the time, it was that women were not given the responsibility of even having their own name. This is the YWCA, which is where the interracial interfaith gathering was earlier that year in April. And this is in October when Joy Earl first gave her first study class. So the second house that David and Joy Earl lived here in Lansing was 624 LaSalle Boulevard. I'll go back to the advent of divine justice specifically because this isn't really mentioned very much, and I think it needs to be highlighted. In the conflict of this twofold crusade, the valiant warriors struggling in the name and for the cause of Baha'u'llah must of necessity encounter stiff resistance and suffer many a setback. Because of Abdu'l-Baha, the beloved master has prophesied, many a test will be visited upon you. Troubles will befall you and suffering afflict you. This is part of the twofold crusade. So this is the tragedy that happened between David and Joy Earl in Lansing. Up to this point, we had not mentioned whether there were many or any newspaper accounts of David and Joy Earl moving from their Kingsley courthouse to their new home, 624 LaSalle Boulevard. Located on the east side of Lansing and in a growing Baha'i community, personal accounts of outside activities have not been able to be confirmed through any written accounts, but Earl family members confirmed the following as a historical event. In the spring of 1940, David and Joy Earl were confronted at their home by the local members of the Black Legion, a virulent white supremacist group affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan. This group included people who may have been responsible for the brutal murder of Reverend Earl Little, Malcolm X's father, in Lansing back in 1931. That's the connection. The activity of the Black Legion at the Earl residence caused the young Joy Earl to go into shock, which led to the loss of their only child. Their child, a boy, is interred in the Children's Garden section of the Deepdale Cemetery, Lansing, Michigan, near the west side of the Waverly Road Bridge where it meets the Grand River. The Deepdale Cemetery record lists the Earl child was stillborn. The grave marker in the Children's Garden reads, Earl, our little Bobby, April 15th, 1940. A trust from thee. The Baha'i World in Memoriam, 1992 to 1996, on page 346, says this. David Earl was buried next to his wife, Joy, and their infant son in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Their son, Bobby, a trust from thee, is buried in the Children's Garden section of Deepdale Cemetery here in Lansing. I found this out when I was asking my babysitter about David Earl, because David Earl wound up being, it says, cared for by her and her husband. And she said, no, their son is in Lansing. We used to go visit. So this is my other time check, specifically. "312 North Holmes is the address of the house that Joy Earl stayed in when she was in Lansing after the traumatic experience at 624. This is a rental property that David Earl had while they were actually listed as having a Detroit address. So Louis Gregory comes back to Lansing in 1942. Talks specifically about the destiny of America, and he had traveled extensively. In his address, he will discuss the potentialities of this continent in establishing and maintaining a permanent world peace. The public is invited to attend the lecture given under the auspices of the Lansing Baha'i Group. Louis Gregory did not stay in Lansing. He actually stayed in Olivet and was guest of the Farron family for that last week in January. 9 days later, Joy Earl speaks on world brotherhood in Lansing at the Michigan Methodist Church. World Brotherhood, Joy Earl at 6:30 in the evening. This is the Michigan Avenue Methodist Church. It is now a parking lot. So Joy and David Earl, after moving from Lansing to Detroit, and David enlists in the Navy as part of World War II, it said, travels to Colorado because of his skills as a linguist. This is the photo of Joy Earl taken in Boulder, Colorado. And on the back of it, it says, seeing this, you can imagine why people always took me for Japanese. Davy was in the Navy Japanese language school in Boulder. The Baha'i Centenary Banquet, May 25th, 1944, the Grand Ballroom in the Stevens Hotel at Chicago, Illinois. This banquet was at the end of a week-long celebration of the centenary of the Declaration of the Baha'i. Over 1,600 people attended. Hand to the cause, Louis Gregory is seated with Joy and David Earl. David Earl is in his U.S. Navy dress white uniform. This is 2 weeks before Mr. Gregory's 70th birthday. And this is the photo. This is David. This is Joy. This is hand to the cause of God, Louis Gregory. Joy Earl, from that point, goes forward and speaks about the faith in different places in the United States. Pittsburgh, Portsmouth, Notice that her address is Cleveland, Ohio, specifically 1078 Parkwood Drive. There were this is other places, but we chose not to highlight them here at this time. The Christmas gift given to David Earl in 1944 was from his father, and it was the Christ of the American Road. David Earl's father never really accepted David's religion as being a Baha'i. And this was the last gift that he was given. He always wanted David to become a minister, and he wanted to bring him back into speaking from the pulpit that says about Christianity. So this is Joy Earl speaking in Birmingham, Alabama, February 1946. The spiritual power released through Baha'u'llah. Before people can come together without harm physically, they must come together spiritually. This is Joy Earl talking about firesides in Birmingham, Alabama. The weekly review gives the update on sessions that she had at Duke University and historically Black colleges and universities in Alabama. This is where she spoke and said the quotation, "Before people can come together without harm physically, they must come together spiritually." Notice how it says Joy is one of America's most brilliant young women. It will be a great privilege for those fortunate enough to hear her at this time. That's the quote. After Booker T. Washington, Joy Earl kept holding firesides or speaking engagements at historically Black colleges and universities throughout the South. Miles College, Talladega State Teachers College, Tuskegee College, and Bethune-Cookman. Those are documented events. I'm sure there are a couple more. I know she spoke at Fisk, and I think she may have even spoken in Atlanta. This is Joy Earl in Miami, March 15th and 16th, talking about the world tomorrow and then the coming of world religion. This is David Earl speaking about how Esperanto would lead interested parties into the Baha'i faith. This is David Earl a month later here at Olivet College in Michigan talking about the essential unity of the prophets. David Earl speaking publicly, talking about democracy without politics, coming back to Lansing. This is David Earl speaking at a fireside. The attendees, Richard and Lois Nolan, special Baha'i meetings. This dealt specifically as the search for faith. This is the location where David Earl spoke. This was the home of Kenneth and Roberta Christian. Kenneth Christian was a member of the National Spiritual Assembly, and Roberta Christian, his wife, they both became, said, Knights of Baha'u'llah. This is also my time check. David Earl at Llewellyn Baha'i School, talking about the role of religion in world history. David Earl at the Baha'i State Convention in Lansing, at the Hotel Porter, February 6th, along with Joy Earl. Let me see if I can play this.
Lansing's first Baha'i wedding took place Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock in the Blue Parlor of the Women's Clubhouse in the presence of guests from Detroit, Olivet, Lansing, Adrian, Flint, and Ypsilanti. The bride was Miss Margaret Yider, 507 Jones Street, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Arnold Yider of Adrian, and her husband is Michael Jameer, 1316 Jerome Street, son of Mr. and Mrs. John D. Jameer of Philadelphia, PA. David Earl, chairman of the Detroit Baha'i Assembly, was bridesman and head witness for the simple ceremony chosen by the couple in which no clergyman played a part. The occasion began with a song, I Pledge My Heart, composed by a Lansing resident, Richard Howell Nolan, and sung for the first time by his brother, John Lester Nolan, accompanied at the piano by Mrs. Mabel Vickery, also of Lansing. The vocal selection was followed by a reading from the writings of Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i World Faith, after which the bride and groom entered the room to the music of Verdi's Triumphal March. The couple were united in marriage by repeating the only required form of the service as the bridegroom said, Verily we are content with the will of God, and the bride rejoined, Verily we are satisfied with the desire of God. The bride wore a powder blue gown with lace insertions and a pink rose corsage. Ushers for the occasions were W. Kenneth Christian and William Taylor, both of Lansing. After March 1st, the pair will be at home at 507 Jones Street. The bridegroom is a sociology major at Michigan State College, and his bride is a teacher at the Walnut Street School and a registered nurse.
It's interesting that a member of the National Spiritual Assembly is an usher at this wedding. William Kenneth Christian was an usher, and David Earl was chairman, was the bridesman and head witness. This is the location. This is the blue room right here on the right. This one. This is David and Joy Earl specifically. This is at another event. This is the Lewis Gregory 1949 letter to Joy and David Earl. It has the Elliott, Maine postmark. It's Aaron. And if someone's asking me, how do I know it was from Lewis Gregory? This is how. So this is the letter, and I'll read it specifically. O ye two fragrant and beautiful flowers in the rose garden of El Abha. We long for your early presence here, and although on the plane of reality, your favorable answer has come, yet this is to remind you that in the evolution of the Green Acres School into the world's greatest university and the teachings possible, cities with true yet undeclared Baha'is who may be attracted here for teaching and declaration of their faith, and in the disclosure of the wealth of the environs of Green Acre and its business and art and technical and scientific possibilities, there are great opportunities for your rare talents to shine in many ways. Also, perhaps to increase your wealth and means of service. Affairs depends on means, says Baha'u'llah. The Guardian has also referred to the unsuspected treasures of the world. Lovingly, Uncle Lewis. David and Joy Earl's address in New York City. David was getting a PhD in languages. Claremont Avenue, there's a postcard which he wrote his mother, and 17 Brown Hall, North Brother Island, Bronx, 54, New York. If you want to, Google North Brother Island, you'll get a nice 5-minute, 30-second that said documentation of what goes on there. It's interesting, but it hasn't been inhabited by humanity in over 50 years. This is Hand to the Cause of God, Lewis Gregory's prayer book. This is the first page. Out of pure reverence, I chose not to. Let's just go any farther than that. At the top, it says, prayer revealed by Baha'u'llah. Glory be unto thee, O God, for thy manifestation of love to mankind. O thou who art our life and light, guide thy servants to thy way, and make them rich in thee, and free from all save thee. O God, teach them thy oneness, and give unto them a realization of thy unity, that they may see no one save thee. Thou art the merciful and the giver of bounty. O God, create in the hearts of thy beloved the fire of thy love, that it may burn the thought of everything save thee. Reveal unto them, O God, thy exalted eternity, that thou hast ever been and will ever be, and that there is no God save thee. Verily, in thee they will find comfort and strength. And at the bottom, you can see David Earl's stamp. Louis Gregory gave his prayer book to Joy Earl upon his passing, and upon Joy, upon her passing, gave David that book, which he took with him when he went pioneering to Palau and Guam. I go back to mention this specifically is because these are my parents, and Wednesday was the 70th anniversary of their wedding. This is the first house that David and Joy Earl lived in Detroit. That's when they moved from Lansing. This was the house that they listed to the Detroit Assembly. This is the house, this is the residence, where David and Joy Earl were listed as part of the 1940 census in Detroit. And they were both listed as being Negro. This is because of the miscegenation laws at the time. This is where David listed the address when he went into service for the military for World War II. This is the only house along with the next to it in a 3-block radius in Detroit. This is the house after World War II that David and Joy Earl lived in. And this is the house, 1710 Pengree Street, where they received the letter from Hand of the Cause of God, Louis Gregory. All 5 of these houses are still in existence today. This is a photo of Lansing's local spiritual assembly. This is Richard Nolan, Lois Nolan, Knights of Baha'u'llah. This is Roberta Christian, Kenneth Christian, Knights of Baha'u'llah. This is Joanne Menking, Knight of Baha'u'llah. This is Joan Farron, who Louis Gregory stayed with. This is my mother, our mother. And they're holding the greatest name. So all of these folks in 1952, this is the same house that where my parents were married in 320 North Butler. This is Clarence Taylor, and this is his wife, Genevieve. This is, let me see, Lois Frazier and her husband, Gordon. Carolyn Ziegler, Fauna Taylor. Have I not named everyone? I said Richard and Lois. So Richard and Lois Nolan became Knights of Baha'u'llah and gave up all of their worldly possessions except for 2 suitcases, which they took their 3 children with to pioneer for the faith in the Azores. This is the 1953 National Spiritual Assembly members. You'll notice Kenneth Christian. You'll notice Elsie Austin. You'll notice Dorothy Baker. You'll notice Matthew Bullock. You'll notice Horace Holly. You'll notice Paul, this is Haney. You'll notice Catherine True. You'll notice Mamie Sato. You'll notice Bora Cavalin. Remember, half of them went to Pioneer. Dorothy Baker passed away less than a year later. This is W.E.B. Du Bois, and the reason I include this slide particularly is because of what Margaret Jameer wrote in her letter, which I will play for you.
Dear Dr. Du Bois, this is a note of thanks. Thanks that I don't wish to leave to the vast reaches of eternity to deliver. I was thinking about it just now as I was rocking my baby to sleep, and when I came downstairs, I called the library. They looked in Who's Who for me, and now I have your address, and a 3-cent stamp will deliver my thought to you. Half my lifetime ago, I attended a session at Olivet College here in Michigan. Congregational Young People's, I believe it was. While I was there, someone came and read some of James Weldon Johnson's poems for us. I loved poetry, and here was opened up for me a vast new realm, which for some odd reason had not appeared in my high school texts. Odd that poetry should be segregated, and I had not missed it, as children and many adults too overlook things which are not clearly pointed out. That fall, when I attended Western Michigan College in Kalamazoo, I delved deeply, wrote a term paper on this new theme, Negro Poetry in America, and there I found your books. And I was just thinking today, I do believe it was they which set me on the path of search. No other place did I find the thought of a new Messiah, a new Christ, who would champion all the peoples of the world. Some years later, after much doubt, hopelessness, and disgust with the way the world ran in general, I found him in the person of Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i faith. Finding this faith, dear Dr. Du Bois, this is a note of thanks. Thanks that I don't wish to leave to the vast reaches of eternity to deliver. I was thinking about it just now as I was rocking my baby to sleep, and when I came downstairs, I called the library. They looked in Who's Who for me, and now I have your address, and a 3-cent stamp will deliver my thought to you. Half my lifetime ago, I attended a session at Olivet College here in Michigan. Congregational Young People's, I believe it was. While I was there, someone came and read some of James Weldon Johnson's poems for us. I loved poetry, and here was opened up for me a vast new realm, which for some odd reason had not appeared in my high school texts. Odd that poetry should be segregated, and I had not missed it, as children and many adults too overlook things which are not clearly pointed out. That fall, when I attended Western Michigan College in Kalamazoo, I delved deeply, wrote a term paper on this new theme, Negro Poetry in America, and there I found your books. And I was just thinking today, I do believe it was they which set me on the path of search. No other place did I find the thought of a new Messiah, a new Christ, who would champion all the peoples of the world. Some years later, after much doubt, hopelessness, and disgust with the way the world ran in general, I found him in the person of Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i faith. Finding this faith has made a vast difference in my life. A pattern began to come clear, and I received courage to go ahead and live my life with hope, realizing that if God has said the earth is one country and all mankind its citizens, nothing can prevent its eventually being so in this physical world, in spite of the stubbornness, selfishness, and stupidity of his human creation. And he fits the yardstick given in your books when he says, "You are all the leaves of one tree, the fruits of one branch." But then I know you know about the Baha'i faith because Louis Gregory quotes you in his book, race and man. So, thanks again for helping to direct the course of my life, as well as letting me find much beauty in your lovely prose and poetry. Forgive me for a hurried note. A mother is always busy. The largest child is coming down from his nap, and I must go. Most sincerely, Mrs. Margaret Jameer.
The reason I shared that with you is because this is a white woman telling W.E.B. Du Bois that she found the faith through his writings and through others of people of color. This is the ministry of the custodians. This is David Earl. These were the people who were in charge. This is of the faith upon the passing of Shoghi Effendi in 1957. Their responsibility was to elect the Universal House of Justice. You'll notice Hooper Dunbar, David Earl, and Elsie Austin. This is Joy Earl's last letter, September 27th, 1972, 2 months before she left this world. My dear Vi, we were so happy that you have decided, after all, to travel. I'm sure there was a large hole in your life when the school bells rang and you didn't respond. After much going to and fro, we have finally gotten settled in a small apartment in Kyoto, which seemed to offer the best base for David's research. He is now anxious to get on with it, and we have worked out a schedule which assumes he can finish his work by November 1st at the very latest. We will then go to Korea for a week, come back to Japan, and rest at a hot springs hotel in Shimoda. Go to Tokyo on November 21st and leave for Honolulu on the 25th. We will stay a week or so in Hawaii and then head for home. Now fire off a letter to us and say when you'll be coming. I'm so sorry that I haven't written sooner. But I've been ailing ever since I drank bad water in India. It was made worse by the pace we had to go at to meet the believers all over Malaysia and Singapore. What a thrill. I just had enough energy to meet my Baha'i obligations and get back into bed. I'm going to spend a few days at the Maghreb because Maheen is taking me shopping for warm clothes. Come, love, Joy. She passed away 2 months after writing this letter because she said after November 1st, when David finished, they came back directly, it says, to Michigan, where she left this world on November 27th. This is a picture of Joy Earl. This is a picture of Dr. David McGarry Earl. This is Dr. Earl a few years before he left this world. Notice that he's teaching. Notice the color of the person he's teaching. David Earl pioneered to Palau and Guam after the passing of his wife, Joy. This is the gravesite of Joy and David and Bobby. I do this because I figured they might as well be together one time in this world. This is a picture my mother took of Elsie Austin at Llewellyn, because my mother was one of those people who was guided to the faith by a person of color, and it was Elsie. We are making a serious effort to pry human beings away from their alienating traditions, their comfortable ignorance, and their prejudice. But we must try harder. After all, the battle we face is essentially a spiritual battle to transform the souls and spirits of human beings, to empower them to express love and justice, and to develop a unity of conscience. Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of biography and history. The Miseducation of the Negro, 1933, Carter Woodson, the book that changed Malcolm X's life. This is a picture of David and Joy, David's parents. If I have time, I'd just like to play this from my childhood. It says Teacher Janet Williams, and it's love.
Know thou of a certainty that love is the secret of God's holy dispensation, the manifestation of the all-merciful, the fountain of spiritual outpourings. Love is heaven's kindly light, the Holy Spirit's eternal breath that vivifieth the human soul. Love is the cause of God's revelation unto man, the vital bond inherent in accordance with the divine creation in the realities of things. Love is the one means that ensureth true felicity both in this world and the next. Love is the light that guideth in darkness, the living link that uniteth God with man, that assureth the progress of every illumined soul. Love is the most great law that ruleth this mighty and heavenly cycle, the unique power that bindeth together the diverse elements of this material world, the supreme magnetic force that directeth the movements of the spheres in the celestial realms. Love revealeth with unfailing and limitless power the mysteries latent in the universe. Love is the spirit of life unto the adorned body of mankind, the establisher of true civilization in this mortal world, and the shedder of imperishable glory upon every high-aiming race and nation.
These are Richard and June Thomas, who have steadily advised me with regard to the progress of the book that I'm writing on David and Joy Earl. Richard's reading a book. I'm sorry.
Are you near the close?
Okay. I just got
the time because it's 12:35 and
okay.
Ends at 12:30.
Okay, no problem. I'll just show these pictures and I'm gone.
Okay.
This is a picture of the Black Men's Gathering, the local Black Men's Gathering at 2006. The reason I include this is because this is my brother who passed away. This was his last public gathering. And this is Richard and Nelson Freeman, who left this world last year, and Al Daniels, who left this world a month ago. These are the Ghana 32. This is Bruce Reynolds. That's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, Burton, thank you so much. This rich offering of this untold history that you are telling. And we do understand that you're putting this in a book, in book form.
That's correct.
We speak, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The part of David and Joy Earl that hasn't been told, specifically around their life here in Lansing and all of the things that you saw about them talking about racial amity, even before the Guardian released the Advent of Divine Justice, as well as everything that happened specifically involving them and, their, it says their interactions with local people here, pastors and the like, because Joy Earl was given a remarkable, ability. It says to speak in front of all of these different congregations about racial amity, and yet there's no record of it. And the only way you can find that is if you go into the records of the individual pastors. And that's it. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate it. This was amazing. Thank you so much, Burton.
Yeah.
Friends, unfortunately, because of the time, hopefully what you were given, the heavenly manna of David and Joy Earl and Louis Gregory and others will suffice you until the next time Burton is back with us. So we won't be able to do the question and answer today. We're just going to go ahead and if we have any guests that are present who are new to the group, just joining us for the first time, or back, from maybe traveling away and returning to the community, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell how you happen to be here. Okay, we're going to move on then. We do have for the next week, we have two presenters, Dr. Chuck Egerton, I believe that's how it's pronounced, and Dr. Robert James, who will be speaking. I don't have the information about what their topic is, but I know for sure that it's going to be dynamic. So make sure that you stop in for those outstanding presentations as well. Watch for the details soon. And please remember the food distribution program, which is every Thursday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Baha'i Unity Center in the parking lot. So kindly spread the word to help combat food insecurity within the community. And for members of the Baha'i faith, you're warmly encouraged to make a financial contribution to the South DeKalb Baha'i Fund and the National Baha'i Fund, and/or through the online contribution system, OCS, and that's ocs.baha'i.us. Or you can mail a check to the Baha'i Unity Center at 2370 Wesley Chapel Road, Decatur, Georgia, 30035. So this time we'd like to thank all who worked together to make today's program possible. Our wonderful guest speaker, our volunteer readers, thank you all. Barbara Hennix, who keeps us moving forward, the Spiritual Assemblies of the Baha'is of South DeKalb County, and Sandy Springs. And thanks to all of you for sharing your day with us. I'm Hermione Pickens. It's been a pleasure. Until next time, stay safe and well. We will end now with the closing prayer for the departed. Barbara Taylor, if you're still here.
Yes, ma'am, I'm still here.
Okay, wonderful.
Glory be to thee, O Lord my God. Abase not him whom thou hast exalted through the power of thine everlasting sovereignty, and remove not far from thee him whom thou hast caused to enter the tabernacle of thine eternity. Wilt thou cast away, O my God, him whom thou hast overshadowed with thy lordship? And wilt thou turn away from thee, O my desire, him to whom thou hast been a refuge? Canst thou degrade him whom thou hast uplifted, or forget him whom thou didst enable to remember thee? Glorified, immensely glorified art thou. Thou art he who from everlasting hath been the king of the entire creation and its prime mover. And thou wilt to everlasting remain the Lord of all created things and their ordainer. Glorified art thou, O my God. If thou ceasest to be merciful unto thy servants, who then will show mercy unto them? And if thou refusest to succor thy loved ones, who is there that can succor them? Glorified, immeasurably glorified art thou. Thou art adored in thy truth, and thee do we all verily worship. And thou art manifest in thy justice, and to thee do we all verily bear witness. Thou art in truth beloved in thy grace. No God is there but thee, the help in peril, the self-subsisting Baha'u'llah.
Friends, thank you so much for coming. Hopefully we'll see you next time. Allahu Akbar.
Lao Pa, everyone. Thank you so much.